Okay, part 7 is now in session. And then Patrick touches it and he's like, SpongeBob had waited so long for his toy to come. And Patrick's like, "Are you okay?" "Yeah." Of course he's okay, but SpongeBob acts like a toddler saying that he ruined his free toy, and eventually Patrick made it even worse and they both cried about it. Squidward comes and sees like, fuck it. I'm out of here. And he goes into his house and he looks at it, still crying, he was about to play his clarinet, and he's like, and after when the crying got even louder, he gets all mad at them, and he's like, "All right, what's going on? Why the fuck are you two crying about?" And then they try to explain why they're both upset, and Squidward fixes it and tells him that it's supposed to do that, and he's like, "My toy's okay now." And Squidward's like, "Good. Now will you two be quiet?" And SpongeBob hugs him and say, "Thanks. What will we ever do about you?" And Squidward's like, "Move to another neighborhood and without you guys." That was a very shitty episode. SpongeBob acted so rude to Gary, and he acted like a toddler when he got his toy, but eventually Patrick broke it. Why couldn't they fix the problem themselves? They're mature enough to fix it. They didn't have to act like toddlers crying like babies. And why was SpongeBob rude to Gary? He was supposed to feed him. Instead, he acted so rude and ignored it. I bet Gary hates him even more for that. I'm surprised he still has his I'm surprised he still has his pet snail. Which I think he shouldn't, because he's not capable if he's gonna be that ignorant about with him. Especially with that episode where he blames Gary for everything, which we'll get to later on. Bottom line, this was a very terrible episode. SpongeBob and Patrick acted like babies, and SpongeBob acting rude to Gary, and still wait. That's a really awful episode. And the toy itself is looked looked stupid. Okay, it looked stupid. It didn't look cute at all. It looked stupid. Okay, moving on. Boating buddies. Yep. In this one, Squidward was minding his own business, and SpongeBob appears, and he's like, "Oh my god, him again." And then SpongeBob's like, and then SpongeBob ruins his morning like he always do, and he runs after Squidward, and Squidward gets in the boat and and drives away from him, and the police comes, and you have to go back to boating school, Squidward. Yeah, and Squidward freaks out about it. And Squidward, it's like, boating school. I can't believe this. How bad could it possibly get? And SpongeBob comes into the picture, eventually making Squidward's life even worse. And then Squidward cries because he has to deal with SpongeBob in boating school. Class starts and Mrs. Puff tells them that they have a new student named Squidward. And Mrs. Puff asks Squidward why he's here, and he explained everything by drawing on a chalkboard. He explained everything by drawing everything while he was here in the chalkboard, and SpongeBob, it was SpongeBob's turn. He drew something like SpongeBob and Squidward best boating buddies forever, and Squidward was disgusted by what SpongeBob had done to him. He's like, "Shut the fuck up, SpongeBob." And eventually, it's time for SpongeBob to do his driving things. Eventually, things turn out very unsuccessful for him. He done fucks up. Yeah. And yeah, there was an episode where Squidward was minding his own business in the bathroom, but then he sees SpongeBob's shoe and socks, and he got so come to the point where he had his final straw, and he said, "You done fucked up my morning, you done fucked up my lunch, and you're done fucking my..." And then this big guy that looks nothing like SpongeBob, and he beats the living hell out of Squidward. And yeah, and then it comes to the point where SpongeBob done fucks up, and he unsuccessfully does it by doing the driving boat thing. He does it very unsuccessfully. And then later on, yeah, there was also the scene where they shrunk and they went to the costume store when they were about to shrink, whatever, and then they run after the potato chip, and the mailman is obsessed with the potato chip, and they like, "No, you can't have any. No." And then they went back to their normal size, and then Squidward, except for Squidward, Mrs. Puff and SpongeBob are okay, but Squidward not so much. He was in the bathroom, and then he got beaten up. Well, he now ended up in a body cast, everything. And Squidward's like, "Fuck off, SpongeBob. I'm not your boating buddy. I don't need your help, and I don't need you, ever." And then he tells SpongeBob that he needs to take the test by himself. And SpongeBob's like, "Okay, I'll leave you alone." And Squidward's like, "It's about time." And then he tries it, but he couldn't because he was so injured he couldn't do even anything. And yeah, time was up, and Squidward asks SpongeBob if he needs his help, but SpongeBob says, "I thought you didn't need my help." But Squidward's like, "No, I was wrong. We're boating buddies." And SpongeBob's like, "All right." And then it was up, and it's over, and Squidward didn't even fill in a single answer. And he's like, "What the hell am I supposed to do?" And Mrs. Puff's like, "You take it again next week." And then Squidward freaks out. Yeah, that's a horrible episode. Why did Squidward have to go back to boating school? All he wanted to do is get away from SpongeBob, because SpongeBob keeps annoying the living hell out of him, and why did he got beat up twice? Man, those directors are really against Squidward. And yeah, this episode was very heartless. Squidward had to go back to boating school after he got the ticket from the police and all that stuff. And he had to go through hell with SpongeBob in the boating school. Squidward should have moved to a much better neighborhood that isn't Squidwardville related. He should have moved to somewhere else, like a nice and calm neighborhood. not the Squidward, because he can't stand SpongeBob at all. Even when SpongeBob annoys him, he gets so infuriated with him. And poor Squidward in a body cast. That's terrible. And the worst part is, the worst scene in this is when Squidward tries to confess. SpongeBob does this. Is SpongeBob high on drugs? 'Cause he sounds like he's high on drugs. Bottom line, this was a heartless and mean-spirited episode. Squidward gets all the pain and suffering, and he has to go for living hell with SpongeBob. It's just awful. Awful, awful, awful. It was an awful episode. Okay. Last part for part 7 is Yours, Mine, Mine. Another one of those episodes where Patrick had became an asshole. Mr. Krabs was making toys out of Krabby Patties, and Patrick is convinced, and he had it first. And SpongeBob was like, "Can I have a turn?" And he's like, "Fuck off! It's mine!" And then the next day, so Patrick had it all day, and then the next day, SpongeBob asked for it, and he's like, "No!" And then the two of them bicker at each other, and they fight for it. And Patrick had his final straw, and then he ate it, and SpongeBob flips out about it, and Mr. Krabs like, "What the fuck is going on?" And SpongeBob was like, "Patrick wouldn't let me play with it." And he's like, "SpongeBob wouldn't let me play with it." You fucking liar! Oh my god, Patrick is lying. He had this toy the whole fucking time. So Mr. Krabs made a deal with them and gave them 2 new toys that's made out of Krabby Patty. And SpongeBob and Patrick doesn't pay for it. He steals SpongeBob's wallet, and he's like, "Excuse me, that's my wallet." And he's like, "Have you learned nothing about sharing?" Are you kidding me? Patrick, you had the toy the whole time, and now you're stealing other people's money? Patrick, honestly, you should go to prison for stealing, because SpongeBob knew how to share, and he knew what sharing means. But you, on the other hand, you learn nothing about sharing. Especially when you had the Krabby Patty the whole time, not even showing it to SpongeBob. Why? Oh my god. This was a very mean-spirited episode. That's why Patrick is such a big asshole. In this episode, Patrick is the most unlikable asshole ever. He had this toy the whole time, not even showing it to SpongeBob. This is the most infuriating thing episode ever. It's infuriating. And they had to bicker and fight for that toy, and Patrick eats it rather than giving it to SpongeBob. Oh, Patrick, you're such a dick. Patrick is such a dick. Not only he's a big asshole, he's also a big dick. Yeah, Patrick Star is the most hateful character in this episode. He eats the Krabby Patty toy, not showing it to SpongeBob, and he keeps it to himself. So yeah, that was a very terrible episode. Yours, Mine, and Mine, a terrible episode, and it was very mean-spirited. Part 8 will be in session, so stay tuned.